The Philippines, as a signatory to most of the major international human rights treaties and instruments, must live up to its commitments, in contrast to the dark era that once engulfed us. We are now making certain that our commitments to those treaties do not remain paper promises, because for the first time in nearly a decade, we have a government that is indeed serious about human rights.
Mahal naming Pangulong Noynoy Aquino. Ako si Perlita Bucal, anak na panganay ni Alfredo Bucal. Ang aking ama ay umpisa nung dinukot noong November 10, 2010. Hanggang ngayon hindi pa namin nakikita.
Mahal na Presidente Noynoy Aquino, ako po si Erlinda Cadapan, nanay po ni Sherlyn Cadapan na dinukot noong June 26, 2006.
Pangulong Aquino, ako si Ginang Concepcion Empeño, ina ni Karen, isang estudyante ng UP Diliman na dinukot noong June 26, 2006.
Presidente Aquino, ako si Edith Burgos, ang nanay ng nawawalang aktivistang Jonas Burgos. 5 taon, mahigit ng 5 taon na hinahanap ko ang anak ko. Lahat ng pwede kong gawin, ginawa ko na hindi ko pa rin siya makita. Ang pangako mo na lang ang pinanghahawakan ko na sana makita ko ang anak ko at the soonest possible time and find him alive. President Aquino, you promised. You promised. Please fulfill your promise so that the trust of the people would be restored to you.
Ang aking amang si Alfredo Bucal, sadyang sa totoong buhay, siya'y isang mabait na tao. Nung ikasal ang aking nanay, ayun na ang naging trabaho ng aking ama. Ang pagta-tricycle driver, pagtatanim sa tubigan, at ang pangingista. Kaya siya hinuli sa checkpoint dahil ang mga sakay niya ay mga MPA daw. Sinipa dito sa likod, gumanyan yung mukha niya. Pero bagamat gumanyan yung mukha niya, nakaganyan pa rin siya. Hindi niya inaalis yung kamay niya, nakaganyan talaga siya. Talagang surrender yung tatay ko. Wala kaming balita sa aking ama kung pinatay ba nila, kung sinalvage ba nila, o ikinulong nila. Kung buhay pang aking ama, ilabas naman nila, parang awa na nila sa amin.
Uniformed men abducted Alfredo Bucal from this highway on November 10, 2010. He was among the first victims of enforced disappearances under President Benigno Aquino. Since Aquino came to power 4 months before Bucal's abduction, several other cases of disappearances have been reported. Human Rights Watch has documented at least 3 of these cases, and not one of the victims has been found. The continuing disappearances under a government that promised justice to victims of human rights abuses have been a source of despair for the families of the victims.
Hanggang sa ngayon, patuloy pa rin ang human rights violation dahil mayroon pa rin mga nangyayari, pagdudukot, pagpapatay.
On June 26, 2006, armed men abducted Erlinda's daughter, Sherlyn, in Bulacan, a province north of Manila. Taken along with Sherlyn was Karen Empeño. Both were students from the University of the Philippines. Both were activists.
Naniwala ako doon sa kwento ng Raymond Manalo na nakikita niya na yung Sherlyn ay nakatali ang paa sa itaas, hubot-hubad pa. Ganun ba ang moralidad ng ating mga militar?
Nakaranas si Karen ng torture, binubuhusan ng tubig ang kanyang ilong na patiwarik, at nirape pa daw sila. At ang hindi pa maganda doon yung pinasukan pa daw ng kahoy o anong bagay ang kanilang ari. Yun ang pinakamatinding ginawa nila na mahirap tanggapin.
According to an eyewitness account, soldiers under the command of General Jovito Parparan were behind the abduction, torture, and rape of the 2 women.
We do not know of Empeño and Cadapan, but in our verification in the area supposedly where it happened, I think there was those who were abducted.
As in many other cases of abuses in which military personnel are implicated, the Armed Forces of the Philippines dismissed allegations of abuses against its officers and men, calling these charges part of a communist plot to discredit the military. But the armed forces not only issued blanket denials about the abuses, it resisted efforts to hold its forces accountable for these violations. In the case of Palparan, he and 3 others were charged in December 2011, 5 years after Sherlyn and Karen were abducted. And this happened only because of the efforts by their families to pursue the case. Unfortunately, Palparan and another soldier have managed to evade arrest, while the other 2 who surrendered are in a military camp, rather than in a civilian jail.
We have this perception that the reason why he cannot be found is that those who are looking for him are not really looking for him but protecting him. Yung tuloy-tuloy niyang pagkawala at hindi nga siya makita, ito yung signal sa mga tuloy-tuloy din na dumudukot na pwede nilang gawin ang gusto nilang gawin kasi hindi rin sila mahuhuli.
On April 28, 2007, Jonas Burgos, an activist with a farmers' organization, was abducted while having his meal in a restaurant inside this mall in Manila. According to witnesses, men who turned out to be soldiers and officers dragged Burgos away. Burgos has not been found.
Jonas is my son. Jonas was an activist. He loved farmers, he loved the land. Jonas, to me as a son, was a very loving, very thoughtful, and very caring son.
The disappearance of Alfredo Bucal, Sherlyn Cadapan, Karen Empeño, and Jonas Burgos highlighted the continuing tragedy of human rights abuses in the Philippines. Since the ouster of the late dictator Ferdinand Marcos in 1986, hundreds of political activists, suspected insurgents, environmentalists, and journalists have been murdered, tortured, or abducted, allegedly by state security forces. These abuses occur in the context of a 4-decades-old civil war in the Philippines being fought by the Communist New People's Army, which committed its own share of abuses, and the military, which often does not distinguish between unarmed activists and armed combatants.
Tuloy-tuloy pa rin ang impunity at hindi rin nabibigyan pa rin ng atensyon yung mga pagkawala, no? Yung sa pilit ng pagkawala. Kaya hindi ko masasabing maayos na ngayon. Actually, dapat sana mas maayos ngayon. Dapat sana napagbibigyan ang mga pakiusap, no? The cries of the victims, no? And I'm talking about families of victims of enforced disappearance. But the government has not listened to our cries.
Violators of human rights will be held accountable for their actions, and the state will protect, with unflagging commitment, the rights of all its citizens. The culture of silence, injustice, and impunity that once reigned is now a thing of the past.